from the hearing so I can come live on with you today. Oh, hi. Those hearings got my heart racing to see what those senators are doing to that poor, well, she's not poor, but that a woman who, the first African American woman nominated for the Supreme Court, to see her really harassed. I have one word for how I feel about what's happening to Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. And it's almost like with a sadistic glee that the junior senators from Texas, I believe he's a junior senator from Missouri, how they're going after Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson on the most minute. Well, look, it's important, but it's all they got. It's a pornographic action on the part of these GOP senators, and it really defeats the purpose of getting to know Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. We get to know instead Ted Cruz, although I think we know the kind of person Ted Cruz is already. I think it's safe to say, right? We know. It's safe to say we know about Josh Hawley, who is one of the few senators, one of the few members of Congress who are just hanging on saying nice things about Putin on a day where the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, has gone off to NATO to try to bring things together. It's a little disheartening, but you can see why people get upset with, all right, there was one word that was used today, and it was by Ben Sasse, who's a Republican, normally a nice guy, normally kind of moderate, but he's a Republican out of Nebraska, but he used a term.
And I think we should recognize that the jackassery we often see around here.
The jackassery we often see. This is Ben Sasse talking. I mean, he was talking about grandstanding, which is what we were seeing today on the part of Republicans there at the Ketanji Brown hearings. But not that Sasse didn't have a few moments of his own, but here he says why we're getting the hearings that we're doing. He says we're here
for short-term,
well, he says,
partly because of people mugging for short-term camera opportunities.
Partly for short-term camera opportunities. Oh, and there's little digs, little slights, like when Ted Cruz talks and Senator Leahy says, yeah, the junior senator from Texas who I see on television, right? I mean, this is the showbiz part. Unfortunately, it's not illuminating what we need illuminated on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Not really. I mean, look, we need to know her. We need to talk to her. There were some good moments. Why were the good moments most often the times when she was talking to Democrats? When Dianne Feinstein, Senator of California, the most Asian American state in the country, gives her an opportunity just to explain herself, right? When she gives this a variation of the answer she's always given throughout these hearings. I guess she's been talking now for about 15 hours over 2 days, but 12 hours on Tuesday, about 3 or 4 today. Judge Jackson said, look, I'm neutral. I look at the facts. I consider all the opinions. I try to be, or I write a long, lengthy opinion. I'm transparent in that way. I mean, I really dig in. I'm neutral. I look at the facts. I write a long opinion. I'm transparent. And then she uses the term throughout, stare decisis. You want a judicial philosophy? Stare Decisis, I joke with my lawyer friends. Oh, Stare Decisis, that was a disco singer in the 70s, right? No, that was a starry ball. That was just an accoutrement in a Studio 54. Studio 54 like places. I have a gong, but you have a starry ball in some places. Makes you feel like you're in the disco universe. No, Stare Decisis is let it stand. Let the precedent stand. It's the idea that precedent holds. And she mentioned it. It's a point of law, stare decisis, but it tells you what you need to know. She's going to be fair. She's going to be even-handed. You can tell, and you can tell that she's not bullied. I felt sorry for her, not that she didn't feel some frustration when really beaten up by Cruz and Hawley and Lindsey Graham, all the Republicans, Marsha Blackburn. I mean, really, I haven't written my piece yet, but I had enough to go with the judge on day one, on the day she wore purple, when her college roommates came to her defense. Her college roommates weren't like my college roommates. I mean, they were high-flying lawyers, professors. My point is, we got to know her as a person there, and I was hoping, yeah, all right, that was good for me. But now on the second day of hearings, we had the whole pornography thing came up. Thank goodness there was Chris Coons to bring up this idea that, pornography, this is a national problem with all judges. It's not a problem specific to Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. There's a lot of issues nationwide, including judges that some of these senators have backed in the past, but they're going after Jackson. They're going after her. And Ketanji Brown Jackson said, look, I'm kind of surprised that a small subset of the things that I did or that I've done as a judge is what my appointment hinges on. It's not, which is why we go back to the jackassery comment of Ben Sass, because that jackassery gets cameras, gets attention, gets people on television. That's why people are doing this. And we know that going in. We know that this is part of the dog and pony show, right? The preening, I'm holier than thou, right? And they got constituents to go after. They're running. They want to be president. Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley. Look, my constituents, I'm tough on this judge who people want to believe is some left-leaning ideologue. She's not. She's not left-leaning ideologue. As Chris Coons pointed out yesterday, she made that decision. That was pro-Trump, that said build the wall. Yeah, go ahead. That was a decision that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson made that allowed that. The decision that allowed the RNC to get Hillary Clinton's emails. Yeah, that was a case, RNC versus USAID, I believe. And Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson said, yeah, you got to give Hillary's emails to the RNC. Just a few weeks before the RNC convention. That's pretty even-handed for someone who you think, or some people think is someone you think is some left-wing ideologue. No. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is not a left-wing ideologue. She's fair. She's even-handed. She's equanimous. Now, I came on kind of late today. Usually I give you a little more lagniappe here on our show. But I was watching the hearings because this is the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAX. So as we cross the 2:00 hour, our lagniappe is a little less. But I wanted to make sure I stayed for all of Macy Hirono's questioning, because Lord knows that was a great little exchange there. Cruz is sort of the ringleader of the GOP in terms of going after Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's record on pornography, which is pretty much a red herring. But pornography is one of those moral things that people like to talk about, that moralists like to talk about. Oh, look, I don't get a chance to watch it, but I'm going to go after it. That's sort of their view. I hate pornography to look at, but I love to fight against your right to look at it. I fight against your right to, well, child pornography is bad. It is, but it's a kind of hot button where you mention it and you say, oh, this judge, you want to put her on the court? She's soft on porn. She's soft on child porn. It's baloney. It's pure baloney. And there was an exchange. First of all, you got to start off with Cruz. Cruz talking about this Hawkins case. And if you must know about the Hawkins case, I mean, the Hawkins case is about, let's see, where's the Hawkins case? If you want to talk about what is the Hawkins case? The Hawkins case dealt with a high school student who downloaded pornographic images. It's U.S. versus Hawkins. He was arrested 2012. The guy's 18 years old. He started downloading pornographic images. And he felt confusion and shock, rather arousal, according to his attorney. Because he's a gay boy from a religious family that strongly disapproved of homosexuality. So he was driven by curiosity, according to reports. And driven the images and his connection to the people in them seemed, his lawyer said, to be one of identifying rather than of exploiting them sexually. So, here's the thing. Not all pornographic crime cases are created equally. And this was the thing about this case, the Hawkins case. There was some guidelines put out about how Hawkins should be sentenced. He pleaded guilty to downloading, showing boys who were under 13. And then after the plea, the case moved to sentencing. And the guy wasn't given leniency. Prosecutors asked for a 2-year sentence. And here's the thing. That's what the prosecution asked. They asked the judge to sentence Hawkins to 2 years. But he's a kid. Never spent a single day in prison. And the judge understood his circumstances, had a sense of empathy. It wasn't that she's soft on crime, but she handed down a 3-month prison sentence, followed by 6 years of supervised release. She said when she made the decision, a truly difficult situation, she issued a lower sentence than ones recommended by both the probation department and the non-binding federal guidelines. But the point here, Judge Jackson said, He didn't produce any pornographic material himself. He'd only watch such material for less than a year. He was young, remorseful, had his whole life ahead of him. She showed an amount of empathy. She said, quote, "It is tragic that you permitted your curiosity to jeopardize all of that." So she did follow the guidelines, but she used what discretion she had to try to be fair and even-handed. And I think that's something, the Republicans keep mentioning this case, the Hawkins case. I think you got to say, it's not like a cookie cutter thing. It's not like he was a distributor. It's not like he was, making his living off porn. Every case is unique. And I think when you see Cruz and you see Holly going out there and grandstanding, trying to implicate that for somehow she's soft on crime. She's soft on porn, hence soft on crime. Nothing could be further from the truth. And it just makes me angry to see this when we could have much more productive kind of probes into what kind of person this, although that case does show the kind of person she has empathy and she understands the law, that where she has some leeway, she'll consider all the facts. I think you want that kind of fairness. So I think it's good to have someone like her on the high court. When you have people like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett, the three more recent judges who were put on the court, who Holly and Cruz are trying to play to constituents, their constituents who see Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett, pro-life. They're trying to play to a constituency. And now they're trying to go after Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson because, well, they sense that this is a way to score points for their own careers. Forget about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Oh, they'll probably vote for her. I don't know. They may. They voted for her before. Why they would vote against her now? The same committee voted for her 3 times before. This is the 4th time before. I just think that it's just really tough to watch these things when you know they aren't as honest as you would think or as you would hope. There was an exchange between Holly and Judge Jackson, who continuously has defended her position by saying, I look at the law. I'm neutral. I look at the facts. I read a long opinion. I'm transparent. This is my methodology. And then she went on in this specific porn case, and what explains the differentiation and how she deals with each case. They're all different. The time that the guidelines were written are different from our internet age, where you press one button, you can download 1,000, 10,000 images. It's not like in the old days where it was primarily by mail. And so she said she takes into account some of those things. It's not one size fits all. And of course, Cruz and Holly and, oh, you're soft on crime. Oh, I want to throw the book at these guys. Oh. Grandstanding, preening, jackassery. Ben Sass's word. But it aptly describes what you'll be seeing on the news, later on. That kind, and Holly was really badgering Ketanji Brown Jackson, saying so. Every other senator on the Republican side had brought up this pornography issue. She's dutifully answered each time, but this time when Holly asked, she said, "Sir, Senator, I've answered these questions numerous times." She says, I stand by my answer." Let's see. She said it so many times to him. It's like he wouldn't believe. She said,
Senator, I've answered this question and I'll stand on what I already answered.
So, but your answer is what? I mean, refresh my memory.
Senator, I've answered this question. I've explained how the guidelines work and I'll stand on my answer.
But the guidelines are not mandatory. I wish they were, but they're not. The Supreme Court made that determination. I'm trying to understand why you think it's rational not to sentence criminals based on the number of images they have. You say that this is a policy disagreement that you have with the guidelines. This gets to the core of your judicial philosophy. You served on the Sentencing Commission where you recommended changes to the guidelines based in part on this policy disagreement. So I think it's relevant and indeed vital we understand what the policy disagreement is. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
Senator, I previously explained what the policy disagreement is and I will stand on my answer.
So you're not going to answer my question?
No, I've answered your question in my answer.
You haven't answered my question. I'm sitting here asking you and you're declining to answer.
I've explained how the guidelines work. I've explained that the guidelines were developed at a time in which the commission of this crime was different than it is today. I've explained that Congress has not intervened to revise or direct the commission around how to deal with the changes in the commission of this crime. And so judges all over the country are grappling with how to apply this guideline under these circumstances. And there's an extreme amount of disparity. And in each...
And that, you heard my dog even agreed with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I mean, look, how many times, really, honestly, when she stood up on her, and said to Senator Holly, I've answered that. Asked and answered. And he insisted, and she went in still. I'm telling you, it goes back to that Ben Sass's jackassery line. There's a lot of jackassery on display on the Senate side. And this is why people distrust government. This is why people distrust they love their representative, but they hate everyone else. That's kind of typical. Hate the Congress, but I love my congressman. Well, good thing Missouri's a small state, because I'm telling you, Cruz, Holly, Tom Cotton, Marsha Blackburn, John Cronin, Lindsey Graham, all the Republicans, some to a lesser degree than others, but they were all hammering on the porn. They weren't hammering on CRT, critical race theory, thank goodness, because that's a losing argument on the part of, if the Republicans are trying to get Ketanji Brown Jackson on that. And this porn thing, it becomes pornographic after a while and sadistic to see them beating up on her when she's answered the question. And then after the Holly exchange, Ted Cruz says, well, look, I want to enter into the record some. This is after the chair, Dick Durbin, a Democrat, had recognized our woman, our Asian American senator, our Asian American representative, Mazie Hirono. And Mazie said, look, I was recognized, and let's see.
Consent that it be admitted to the record. Senator.
That's Cruz trying to admit something to the record because he wants to admit it on camera so people can see it, when he could just give it to the clerk afterwards and admit it on the record. But this is the showbiz, right? Politics is show business for ugly people, the old phrase. So, and then Cruz has to fight back.
Thank you.
Are you denying consent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then Cruz knows, he's the junior senator from Texas. He knows to shut up. And then we have Maisie chiming in.
Aloha, Judge Jackson. Aloha. I'm going to try and spread some aloha into this room. I've found these questions.
That's the thing. You want to see them relax a bit and be human. And when you know you're going to be ambushed by the Republicans, it just spoils the proceedings. It makes the proceedings something that they're not. These are not supposed to be gotchas. These are supposed to be, what you got? Show us what you got. Tell us who you are. So the one thing that I like today, and I've been listening for a good part of the day, and the one exchange, I like Dianne Feinstein's exchange, but I also liked what Leahy gave her the opportunity to say. He said, and Leahy's one of the old guards. Man, this is the thing about senior senators. If you want to find out who's asking the best questions, who is on point, who is using the proceedings well, and I'm not just saying this because they tend to be Democratic, but Durbin, Leahy, Feinstein, Coons. I mean, Cronin is the least offensive of the Republicans, but even, or Cornyn, excuse me, but even Cornyn got into this. Well, are you a criminal, are you calling George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld war criminals? Well, not until they're convicted. So, it's a matter of degrees. But what you want to use these hearings for is you want the judge, in this case, Ketanji Brown Jackson, to let down her hair, so to speak, to be, the really great moments were between Booker and Ketanji Brown Jackson, where she was able to talk about her parents, able to talk about her values. That's why a judge makes a decision that they do. It's not purely case law. Judicial philosophy, what kind of person are they? You can see that Ted Cruz was a debater. So was Ketanji Brown Jackson. But there's a little humanity in her approach versus Cruz, who is all bulldog, and Hawley, who is all white privilege. It's just disgusting. Hawley. And then Blackburn, voice of the South. I'm from Nashville. I just think that if you want to see the best parts of any of the 3 days, catch Durbin's exchange first with Ketanji Jackson, and catch any exchange between Ketanji Jackson and Coons was good, any exchange that allows her to be herself. So here is Leahy. He says,
is there anything you want to convey to them about what kind of Supreme Court justice you would be if and when you're confirmed? It's all yours, Your Honor.
see, now that's not a softball. Some people say, softball. No, that's not a softball. The American public wants to know you. And they know you from the answer to that kind of question more than the answer that comes at her in this accusatory way. As the judge said, I'm surprised that a small portion of my legal career is being scrutinized here. Paraphrasing. Who would have thought? Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson? I mean, everything hinges on pornography? Child pornography? No, it shouldn't. Here's what Ketanji Brown Jackson, how she responded to Leahy's question. Is there anything you want to convey to the American people about what kind of Supreme Court justice you'd be? Here's her answer.
First, let me just address my comments to you in your office, which is something that I've said in speeches because it speaks to who I am and what I value.
That's the important thing. Who is she? What does she value? Look, she doesn't value child pornography. She's a mother. This is the Republican ploy to get to gotcha, not to let me see what you got. Leahy's question. This begins to get to what she's about.
My parents grew up in Florida under lawful segregation. And what that means is that when they were coming through middle school and high school, they were not allowed to go to school with white students. This is.
Can you imagine that? Lawful segregation. Not, segregation, that's bad, we got to fix that. This is essentially separate but equal. Lawful segregation.
This is in the era before and right after the Brown versus the Board decision. There was lawful segregation in places in this country. And it was after that time that Dr. King made his famous comments that people mention about having a dream where people can be judged by not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And I then was born in 1970, and the contrast between my reality growing up in Florida and my parents' reality growing up in Florida, like night and day in terms of the opportunities that were available to me that weren't available to Judge Motley, who is one of my role models in the law. And so what my being here, I think, is about at some level is about the progress that we've made in this country in a very short period of time, I would say. It seems like a long time, but one generation, we've gone from the reality of my parents' upbringing to the reality of mine.
And she says that, and she has me. That speaks to every bone in my body. And if you're an Asian American, it should speak to you too. She talks about legal segregation. That was what her parents were subject to. And how she lived a different life. And if you're Asian American, you know that we have experienced, well, we've experienced discrimination. We've suffered from the fallout of the exclusion laws, being othered because of our looks, because of our race. We've suffered from the internment. Filipinos, Asian Americans in the 30s to the 60s suffered from anti-miscegenation laws. People telling us who you can or can't marry. It's not a matter of gay marriage. It's just like race, based on race. You can't marry a white person. You can't intermarry. American racial purity, right? We know what restrictions feel like. So she talks about legal segregation. She talks about how her experiences are so different. And she's grateful.
And I do consider myself, having been born in 1970, to be the first generation to benefit from the civil rights movement, from the legacy of all of the work of so many people that went into changing the laws in this country so that people like me could have an opportunity to be sitting here before you today.
That is the diversity message. That is a message that you have to just say, hallelujah, sister, you got my vote. She had me from day one. And that's what people need to hear. They need to hear about how historic this is. 114, 115 years. Never been an African-American woman, even though there have been others. Oh, Lindsey Graham tried to make a point. Oh, well, I hope that, I'm not going to put you through this. But of course, other Republicans would put her through the ringer. But he mentioned how if there was a conservative black woman, and there was, he pointed out to the woman who served on the Supreme Court of California, Janice Rogers Brown, 2003. She wasn't going for the Supreme Court. She was going for the D.C. Circuit Court. But she couldn't get past go. And so, yeah, a lot of people on the Republican side who weren't going after the pornography thing. They were going after grievances toward the way other candidates, nominees, were treated. Like Lindsey Graham has a problem with the way Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett has a problem with how they were treated. This is Janice Rogers Brown in 2003. But you raise me one Amy Coney Barrett, I raise you one Merrick Garland. I mean, the Republicans aren't going to be able to live down what happened to Merrick Garland. Talk about politicizing the court. Merrick Garland came before Amy Coney Barrett, before Brett Kavanaugh. Merrick Garland. They wouldn't give him a hearing, the Republicans, because they know how to play nasty when they have the majority and when they don't. You might say, well, maybe the Democrats need to learn better. Well, no. I just think there is this collegiality that has always been in politics, and we just haven't seen it since 1990, I think. It's like 30 years. A generation has forgotten there used to be collegiality. Anyway, back to Ketanji Brown Jackson. So she says, it's because of people who came before me. That's why I'm sitting before you today. And then she says this is the kind of judge she'd be.
What I would hope to bring to the Supreme Court is very similar to what 115 other justices have brought, which is their life experiences, their perspectives. And mine include being a trial judge, being an appellate judge, being a public defender, being a member of the Sentencing Commission, in addition to my being a Black woman, lucky inheritor of the civil rights dream.
Hey, when she said that, lucky inheritor of the civil rights dream, she acknowledges it. She acknowledges that when she comes into life, it's a different life when you're born in 1970 than when you're born in 1960 or 1950 or 1940 or 1930. Unfortunately, that's the incremental process of being a full American. It's not easy. It is not easy. Rights given to people today were not afforded to people born 10 years before, 20 years before, 30 years before, 40 years, 50. You get my point.
And in my capacity as a justice, I would do what I've done for the past decade, which is to rule from a position of neutrality, to look carefully at the facts and the circumstances of every case without any agendas, without any attempt to push the law in one direction or the other, to look only at the facts and the circumstances, interpreting the law consistent with the Constitution and precedents, and to render rulings that I believe and that I hope that people would have confidence in.
And that is, if you had to pick one exchange or one sentence, at least from what I saw, and I know, Booker's up again today. Senator Booker and Ketanji Brown Jackson had a great exchange yesterday. But I truly believe that if you're not looking for anything combative and you're just looking to see what kind of person she is, that's the kind of person she is. That's what makes her history. The question was asked by Leahy. And then she not sneaks in, but she gets in, but besides the race thing and the family background, she gets in how she would look at the law in this even-handed way, using her methodology, adhering to the Constitution, to facts, no agenda. And here's the problem I have. This is a woman who is supremely qualified. And look at the hoops we're making her jump through. It's like, before we give you this lifetime appointment, here's a hoop, and here's a hoop, and here's a hoop. Jump, 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 jump. That's why when she said, I answered that question, Senator Hawley, when Hawley continued to press her on pornography, I answered that question, Senator Hawley. I think she's using her power. She's not going to be bullied. She's going to use that methodology. And of the 4 justices of recent memory, Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and then her. 4. She is so much superior. I'm glad she's there. Anyway, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, I'm telling you, it got heated in there. It got heated in there. And now, I was looking for one other thing here. Washington Post. U.S. says Russian military has committed war crimes. And now, I think this is the other thing. We've been talking about what's going on. It's kind of sad because we got the first female Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. I was really saddened to hear this. I mean, I met Madeleine Albright 2 or 3 times in my career as a reporter. Happened to be in one place that was more social than a reporter. I was there because I was a reporter, but very cordial, very nice, very smart. And one of those just even-handed she just had a lot of credibility with me. I just believed her ability in being fair and getting the job done. Now, you're Secretary of State, you're out there being tough on the part of the United States. I trusted her. I mean, she's the kind of diplomat, the kind of Washington Paul, because that's what she was. She was a politician who all these senators, not all the senators, but the senators that I have named in a disparaging way, they couldn't hold her jockstrap. So other things happening. And I thought this would be an issue, whether or not the judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson, would recuse herself from the Harvard case. And now it says that she will recuse herself in that case examining the college's admissions policies, because she's on the member of the Harvard Board of Overseers. Previously, she said she wouldn't do it. I thought there would be a way that which she could say, okay, look, I don't deal with affirmative action, so I don't have to recuse myself. But now she's saying she would recuse. And if she feels comfortable making that choice and not fighting it, I just think that some people would have made an issue out of it. But here's what this means. It means that if she recuses herself, I think Kagan has to recuse herself. I think for sure affirmative action, at least in the Harvard case, is doomed. I hate to say that, but that's sort of like just doing the math in my head. All the conservatives on one side who would vote to keep it. Roberts, unlikely. Breyer's gone. That would be Jackson. She's recusing herself. Kagan recuses herself. That leaves Sotomayor. She'll vote for it. And it'll be something like what? 6-1? Not looking good for affirmative action. at Harvard, although that's at Harvard. But will it be precedent setting? Anyway, we have outside witnesses coming up on Thursday. I'm just looking at other things that came up while I was talking to you here. I think that's it though. I think that's it for today. I think that's all I wanted to get to. We talked about the jackassery, we talked about her method, we talked about diversity. That's it. That's it. And so I don't have my swish. Let's see if I have my swish. No, I don't have my swish going. My swish is on strike. Hey, that's it for today's show. Stick around momentarily. We'll do our ending meditation. See the replay of this on amok.com. See my columns on ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. That's at ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. See more at amok.com. This is the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. We do this live stream at 2 p.m. Pacific Live, right? It's the micro talk show, our little micro talk show. I talk about things from the Asian American perspective. And also today, the PETA podcast dropped. I talked to Daniel, a PETA Germany employee who went to Ukraine to save dogs and cats. And he tells the story on the PETA podcast. He said it was dangerous not as dangerous at first, but then he's on a mission, cleared it out of his mind. He was in Lviv, and they've set up like an animal underground railroad, right? Where people can bring dogs and cats and animals to shelters in Lviv. They have pickups, and then they take these cats and dogs and they bring them up to Poland, to shelters, to be prepared for adoption, or to take to the vet, or to bring them up to Germany, or to find shelter. And they don't just save the animals, they save the human guardians as well. So catch the PETA podcast wherever you podcast. All right. I mention this because we do this at the end of every show. I mean, you can say, look, I don't mind your rap, Emil, about all these things, but if you got this meditation, they just use your fast forward finger, just come to the end. Because right here, we talk about what it means to feel shame or feel unworthy or to feel not good enough or feel less than. People feel that. If you're a Black, Indigenous person of color, if you're a woman, if you are somehow, because of the dominant white male, is it a hegemony? I don't know, but when I saw Ketanji Brown Jackson stand up to Holly and say, Senator, I answered that question. I answered that, she would not be badgered. But Holly, just like all his other white comrades, taking a look at her and making these assumptions. I just wish the best to the judge, because I think she's going to get it. I think she is going to be confirmed. All the rumblings about, are they going to try to talk Manchin? Trying to talk Manchin. trying to block a Supreme. Why are we playing these games? Why are we playing these games? She not only is worth it, she not only belongs, she is better than the last 3 appointees, at least the last 3. She's better than most of the other people on the court now. So one more day tomorrow. So if you start to feel, I mean, if you were in her shoes and you feel like, I'm not welcome here. Do you stand strong? Do you stand up, or do you crumple and say, yeah, I don't belong. Let me out of here. No, take this hand here, put it here, take this hand, put it, squeeze. You belong. You're worthy. You're not less than. You're not. There. Feel better, huh? And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Back tomorrow. Mahal